Okay, so here we are playing Byzantium. This is the second turn, starting that, and now yellow's going to be going first. Now, here's one of the things we noticed at the end of last turn, that the red player was particularly hindered, perhaps by the green player being right after him, where green is in that second place for the Muslim or Arab power. But that is going to be fixed for the entirety of the game. And this is a problem that shows up in a number of games. But I like to point it out when it appears to be perhaps more of a problem than in others. In this one, I think it may be. It's also a problem in something like 18XX, but at least there you can randomize the seating between games so that it's actually fixed. But in this, there's no such convention. So people who sit in certain locations maybe are fixed in those locations and wouldn't catch the same, maybe a shifting of positions that might be important in some games. In particular here, well, now yellow is going to be the first player, but we're still following that same pattern. So the person who sits to yellow's right or left in a regular game would always go after them and maybe always has some kind of superiority over them or inferiority based on that. Anyway, it's kind of a disturbing thing. Well, yellow, I think, is going to start off with kind of my favorite action, which is, let's grab the Emperor and 2 quick victory points on the Emperor side. And we'll continue with similar actions for everyone else. Come back. Okay, so after yellow's move, red does likewise, grabs the Caliphate. Green? Green says, I don't have much ability to move forward, not as much as I like, so they actually spent 3 tokens and put 2 of them into movement and 1 into their elite army, making their Muslim army appear a little bit more potent than any of the other Muslim armies at this point. Yeah, probably not far from on par militarily to the red one, but it's got the movement actions now, which everybody's kind of spent out their movement on the first turn. Blue? Well, blue grabbed a Civil War action and grabbed themselves Damascus here from yellow. That gave them 2 victory points and a couple of Byzants for pillaging it. And now we're back around to the yellow turn. I'm going to kind of decide what's going on here. So we're beginning to see some infighting showing up, some choices to try to boost the points and the values. Not sure how it's going to all turn out. Next time around, and yellow chose to take some cubes for their armies. I think in particular the Byzantine army, they put some movement cubes and got themselves another elite cube. Over to red, and red fired off the Bulgars and took the last remaining place before things get dangerous. Grabbing a quick victory point for that. And now green. Green kind of wanted to move in and attack red, but red's got their army there kind of hidden. So instead, they played for a Civil War play and took a blue space here instead. And they still had to move a movement cube by my reading of that. And then blue increased their armies as well. They actually gave a movement cube to each one as well as an elite cube to the Byzantines that they won. Right now, though, the players are beginning to see a different feel to the game, which is, if you look at red clearly has the advantage if the Arabs win the automatic victory. So that's kind of where they're aiming at, is to try to break it so that they can take a shot at Constantinople somehow. They've got tied with green here, though, and a lot of points here. So they total out at 30-42, Blue is also doing quite well, more ahead on the Byzantine track than they're behind green here. So on the Byzantine track, they're at 27, 30, 43. They're slightly ahead overall by that. The other players, yellow and green, have fallen behind. Yellow very much so, behind both blue on both tracks, and green is behind red here. So they kind of want to try to target the leaders and carve out their own strength there. We'll see how that kind of goes with blue and red dominating their alliances, and the green and yellow trying to knock down the people who have them dominated. Here we have yellow. This is so hard to remember what's happened. Believe they must have taken more troop points. I'm not sure. Probably to activate their Byzantines. I can't see what else they did. One of the problems, hard to remember and represent what's going on, exception real time. Red needed to build up their own forces, and they did that. Green played a civil war before. They played a movement action to move their army into Edessa, and I believe they took that. I think that was blues, I'm not sure, but it was a Byzantine territory. It's fallen into their hands. That's one of the things you got to keep in mind. It's not just the points that are showing on the victory point tracks. It's also important what's hit here. And what's not clear in the game is the sudden death victory. So in the rules, the only places it's here. So the only time that it's pure victory points is if Constantinople falls. So you can judge that victory very easily. But on anything else, you kind of have to look at the board position. Now, any other victory is going to take 3 full turns to finish up. But you do have to count these discs in those cases. And then on the blue turn, he spent to upgrade a city and grabbed another token under one of his cities. That's a victory point. That's also an extra Byzant he's producing for the Byzantines each turn. Now we keep going. This time around, yellow played the fortify action, and I actually did it this time. I don't know what happened last time. We got that marker there. It doesn't increase victory points. It doesn't increase the money collected, but it does add 1 to the dice in defense. It was the only thing yellow could really do. They didn't want to move their armies at that point. What they would have liked to do was a civil war action, but blue's already done that. And there's only 1 on the Byzantine side, whereas there's 2 on the Arab side. Red did a failed attack on Damascus, and the Caliph's army was weakened by that. Over on green side, they also did a failed attack against blue up here at Trebizond, using the Byzantines against blue's Arab army, and were driven back. Blue, taking those hits, ended up doing an army action, building up their Damascus army to move forward, perhaps into Palmyra, and try to re-expand the Byzantine holdings there. That was once Byzantine, and now we're going back around again. Okay, so yellow's action this time, I think, was a military move into Trebizond. And they took it, and that puts them into a better position to start attacking down into the Byzantine areas. Of course, they've used up all their movement, so they're going to need to refresh their army. Red did refresh their army. They built it up to about the same level blue had, and that's going to prevent blue from attacking. Jumping ahead to blue, what they ended up doing was taking the last city building option and increasing their own. The other city building option went to green, who increased Hamadan. That's beginning to look like a really good option. Spend a cube over there, but now they're all filled up to get more money and more victory points at the end of the game, perhaps. It doesn't really boost your victory points right now the way attacking does, though. But attacking's kind of expensive comparatively. So now we go on. Except foolishly, that wasn't the last of these. These are all Arab ones. I had to move the tokens up to the Byzantine ones. It's kind of hard to remember all these things for me, but we're getting there now. Alright, onward. Filling out some more actions. Yellow built up their armies in preparation so that they can move their Arab army down for an attack on Caesarea, really. Red, green, both took remaining city builds. Red taking Tabuk, which is virtually out of everyone's way. The Byzantines can't attack it, and it's so far away from the main Muslim armies it looks like a safe place. And likewise, green's building up Baghdad in their back areas. These are revenue producers that right now look like they're out of the war. Blue, well, blue didn't have a lot of actions, but they fortified Damascus. Damascus looks like it's right on the front line. They want to make sure it doesn't fall. Onward. We're getting close to the end of this second turn, though, I think. Yellow launched an attack into Caesarea as expected. Was victorious. It's a close run thing, though. They've only got 3 tokens left after having taken it. And green, who was driven out, had 2 left. It's becoming almost worth it, though, for green to rely on their levies to defend their cities now at this point, just because they want to build that army back up. This puts red in a particularly interesting position, though. Red's sitting here in Palmyra. They'd like to build the army up. It's not able to move yet. But they don't have any clear option of where to go with it. They can march into Antioch or Damascus if they build it up. If they build up and go for Damascus, it's going to be a close fight with blue. If they build up and hit Antioch, though, they're opening Palmyra up, and they don't want to do that. It's kind of balance. You don't want to move your pieces. So what they're going to do? They're going to move the Byzantine army and march into Caesarea. We'll see how that works. So they did that and took it, and no victory points for it, though, because it was just a 1-point city. Just some potential victory point later on the Byzantine track if Constantinople doesn't fall. For green, well, green's listening to the choo-choo. I believe they built up their army for the Muslims, mainly to get their movement up so that they could march perhaps to Tarsus, doing a double march. That's going to cost them 3 tokens. But they can't stop at Antioch because it's theirs. And they have to fight it, and they can't fight it because it's theirs. Blue did something similar. They said, the hell with it. I'm going for Palmyra. They built 3 tokens for their Byzantine army, 1 to get the movement, and then 1 for each type of attack. They've got a lot of elites there. Remember, those are worth a die each no matter what. Of course, they're very expensive. But here's the thing. They only had 1 token in here, so they had to spend $6 to get the 2 other tokens. From what I understand, though, it's worth spending some money to get tokens now and then. You don't want to just pile up your money. It's not doing you any good whatsoever. So now we're going on, and it's getting into a more and more interesting situation. I'm going to pause here so that I can upload this. Keep the size relatively reasonable. As long as people are willing to spend money, though, it's less likely that the turn's going to end, because they're going to just keep, kind of playing this bidding war. But they're playing chicken. For example, let's look at the Byzantine army here. It's going to cost $17. Now, they easily have that cash on hand, and they're going to produce more. So they're okay still. But they'd like to take advantage and make that attack. So now they're going to have to pay. Well, no, they actually don't. They're going to make the attack, but then they have to pay cash to get control of the city. They have to have that cash to be able to do that, to even be able to make this attack, from how I read the rules. All right, I'll load this one up, and we'll come back for the second part of this turn 2.